Hello. Hi guys, welcome back to my podcast. Is anybody else scared about eco-anxiety? Because I was a few years ago when David Attenborough's programme about the planet came out, and he was like, guys, you need to get your shit together, otherwise we're not going to have a planet and everything's going to die. And I was so scared to watch that programme that I just didn't watch it for ages. And ironically, after I did watch it, it was like a catalyst to me changing how I lived. Now, we're going to get into that, but I know that eco fear, eco anxiety, climate fear, whatever you want to call it, just the fear of the climate crisis and the world changing is becoming increasingly common. And I think I was like, if I've got this problem, then other people are going to have this problem and probably going to want to hear about it. So today I'm going to be covering what is eco-anxiety. I'm going to call it eco-anxiety, as I think that, it's the same thing as all of those other things I just mentioned. Why are we developing it now in particular? I'm also going to be talking about, why somehow racism got into this podcast, all right? Because I was doing some research and then I came across an article that was like, white people are, written by a white person, white people are being racist because they have eco anxiety. And I was like, what? I was like shook. Like, where did that come from? So I read the article. I've written down some notes on it, and I'm going to be talking about it today because I was honestly like, what the fuck? And then I'm going to be talking about how to get over it. Ironically, because in the article, it's like, oh, white people just want to get over, Anyway, it kind of riled me up a little bit. But I also get some of the points that it was making. But it's like, are we missing something by thinking that, like me, by being like, how did racism come into this? Or does this person, and does this person actually have a point? Or are they just trying to make a racism issue out of nothing? I don't know, but we'll get into that later. I wasn't going to talk about it because I genuinely hadn't even thought about it. And then I saw this article and I was like, no, like, come on, we've got to raise this. And I'm not going to talk hugely about it, but we will get into it. Okay, now I want you to understand that eco-anxiety is actually quite common. And I think it's increasingly common. And if you're young, I would say I'm still young, by the way, 28, I think that's young. If you're young, I guess if you're like millennial, Gen Z, or whatever's below that, or a child, I suppose that's below that, or if you're Indigenous, apparently those are the people that it affects the most. Now, it's kind of obvious, isn't it? Because old people aren't going to see the effects of it. Like, if they die in the next 5 to 10 years, well, they've just had a nice hot summer and that was great for them. But for us, I could live potentially, I don't know, another 60 or 70 years at a push. Then, not if Elon Musk has anything to do with it though, then we're gonna potentially see significant changes over that time, and the future is unknown, as it always has been, but in particular at the moment because of, I do think we think too much, and I talked about this in my last episode. You might want to go listen to it. It's about why are humans all fucked up, because I think we think too much. And I also think that we've got science and we've got news and it's constantly like being bombarded with us. And I think I've seen a change in the UK's climate over the last 10 years, because I remember, now this might be because I was up at 6 a.m. in a bus stop, but it sounds like I was homeless, but no, I used to have to get the bus to school super early, and in January I remember I was so fucking cold. I used to have to like go into a cafe and buy something just so I could sit in there because I was so cold, because it was like minus degrees. Now the January just gone, I feel like almost below 0 degrees Celsius, by the way. And I just remember there being a significant cold difference. Now, I also think summers have gotten hotter now, and I mean, over my time, I have seen some, I wouldn't call them natural disasters, because do we really have significant issues in the UK? But we saw a lot of flooding. Okay, that's kind of it. We saw, in particular, the 2007 floods were particularly bad, but that was quite a long time ago. But anyway, climate issues, environmental change is just flooding the news and, becoming a really big pertinent issue for our generation. And it might have been the case for a little while, but we're all just waking up to it. And in particular, it's just affecting us a lot, because we're like, am I sure I want to bring a child into this world? Like, who's, going to be... I mean, this isn't an issue for me. Like, I do think I still want children, because I think there is some hope for humanity, and I do want a child, or more. But anyway, that's another issue. But there are people that are like, no, I don't want to contribute to the overpopulation or the climate crisis. Now that might change in terms of their, what they're thinking. They might change their mind, when they're a bit older, and that instinct starts kicking in. But at the moment, people are like, nah, I don't want to contribute to the climate issues. We don't need more humans. I mean, it's kind of true. We don't. But yeah, so I think it's very common to hear it on the news, but ironically to avoid talking about it in normal conversations, everyday conversations, because there's it's kind of like, what's the point of talking about it when all it does is induce fear? It's like sitting and just having a conversation about terrorism. Like, you're not gonna just sit there and have conversations in everyday life. So I think a lot of us don't realise that other people have the fear. And I think if you actually spoke to your friends and said, are you guys a bit worried about the climate crisis that we're going through? People would be like, yeah. I don't think there's many people that would be like, nah, not really. I don't really care. The world might be, humanity might be ending the world and, as we know it. And that's fine. I'm okay with that. I don't know anybody that is okay with that. Except old people. Okay. Young people, if you speak to any young person, I feel like they would be concerned about it. But a lot of the older people, I really don't think that they care, and I'm not asking them to care. Actually, maybe I am a little bit, because it's don't you care about your, your future generations? And also, well, old people are much less likely to change their ways, though, aren't they, I suppose? But yeah, I think working in the hospital it really jaded me. I don't know if that's the right word, actually. It really made me it affected my overview of how we're treating the environment, because we use so much single-use stuff and I hated it. I was like, why am I using a pair of gloves for fucking everything? I get it, I did it, but it's kind of annoying because you're constantly putting rubber gloves on and off. And how many do you use in a day? Well, it depends what you're doing, but you could use 50, 30, especially the nursing staff. When I was working as HCA, we were constantly on off, and it was not only exhausting but also you just see all the waste that you're just going through. And a lot of people have tried to make some changes in the hospital, not necessarily with that, and we have made changes. We have got reusable surgical, I don't know how I've turned this into medicine talk, I'm sorry, but we've got reusable, I'll get off it soon, I promise. We've got reusable surgical sets which go away and become sterilised, reusable surgical gowns, because before we used to just throw them all away, extremely wasteful. But there's still a lot of way to go, and do you know what, I think I would... I don't know, would I be good in that team? I think I would get pissed off about the barriers, the red tape that you come across. Why is it so hard to change what kind of orange juice carton you get? I'm sorry, they give the patients these tiny little... I don't even know why we're giving them fucking orange juice. Most of them have diabetes anyway. No, they shouldn't be drinking it. Anyway, we give them these tiny things of orange juice or apple juice. I understand it has vitamins in it, but just eat an apple. And they're this big. They're little yogurt pots, but we've got fucking millions of them. And half of them don't even drink it, but once you give it to them, you have to throw it away. You can't just reuse it. So hospitals are just so wasteful. Do not get me started on that. I can't. It frustrates me a lot. And then you've got these stupid plastic fucking pennies that you rip off and throw in the bin, and I'm just like, what about the animals? So anyway, so I think let me get into my story of eco fear. I had I think it was over COVID, right? Everyone was like, oh, COVID is because of environment, we're getting too close to animals and stuff like that. I mean, is that really true? Or is it because people are, eating certain meats, i.e. bats? I don't know. We still don't particularly know where it came from, I think, because anyway, that's a different issue. But is it because, is the climate crisis only going to make pandemics more common because we're destroying animals' habitats and they're going to move into our habitats, or we're going to move into theirs, and then we're going to mix, and then it's going to cause virus or organism crossover, and we're going to create new diseases and that we're not going to be able to treat. Anyway, so that happened over COVID, that kind of that concern. And then, we had a lot of time to think, a lot of time to worry, a lot of time to panic over COVID because we were sat at fucking home, weren't we? God, honestly, when I look back at that time, I'm like, that was actual torture. Okay, I'm exaggerating, but it was so bad. I hated it so much. I'm such a social person. I love seeing people, talking to people, and I was thankful to go into work because I was I actually get to leave the house. Fair play to you people. I mean, if you were furloughed, I have no sympathy whatsoever. Furlough, for those of you in a different country, was basically if you didn't go into work and you were paid by the government normally, the government gave you 80% of your salary to not go into work. Insanity, but pretty good. I mean, yeah, we needed it, but I do think those people could have been redeployed to other areas. Anyway, off topic, tangential thinking. So yeah, a lot of thinking over COVID, and especially about the environment. And then I remember this, I can't remember what it was called, but David Attenborough. In fact, I'm going to Google it quickly because it was the most recent one he did. Okay, I found it. Oh my god, David Attenborough. I fucking love him. Again, I know I have a lot of listeners from other countries that are not the UK. David Attenborough is, just Google him. You need to go and watch his things. If you're into the environment or nature, he is amazing. He is to us if when the Queen died, everyone was a bit oh, that's a national treasure lost. We will probably have the same effect when David Attenborough dies, because this man, right, he is 96, nearly 97. This man's so old, but he's still so fit and active. Anyway, he is a national treasure. He's a fucking hero. Everybody loves him. He's the granddad Greta Thunberg, is that her name? Yeah, anyway, so go check him out if you haven't seen him already. And he created a show called Our Planet. Now, a lot of his shows do have a climate twist, guys, we're destroying the world, what about the walruses who are falling off the cliffs because there's not enough room for them to live. And so a lot of his shows do have an environmental twist, and this one in particular did at the end, and it was particularly about how the climate crisis is affecting our ecological system. But it was I didn't want to watch it because I knew that it had that twist, and I was scared. I was if I avoid the problem, if I pretend it doesn't exist, then does it even exist? No. So I'm a bit of a bury my head in the sand, let's pretend it doesn't exist and hope it'll go away. Well, does that work? No, it doesn't. It never works. I'd love it to work. I'd love ignorance to be the best answer to everything. If I could just ignore all my problems, if I ignored my bills and they went away, that'd be the best day ever, wouldn't it? But it doesn't happen, sadly. So, So yeah, I watched it eventually, and actually it fucking drove me. Like, it gave me energy. Like, it really did. I was like, yes, I'm gonna change the way I live. I went vegan for Lent, which is only 40 days, but I found that quite hard. And what else did I do? I've stopped having dairy milk. I mean, I kind of think that's a good thing for your health as well. I'm like, I don't need to drink baby cow milk because it's got growth hormone and stuff like that in it. Like, I'm not a growing cow. I don't need it. So switching up my milk, eating less meat. I used to eat so much meat, oh my god. But I also, from a health perspective, I'm like, I don't really want to eat meat. I don't think I need that much. So yeah, it changed and probably has helped my, body as well. But I made a lot of changes. I started really like focusing on becoming like environmentally friendly, like especially about buying things in certain packaging. I will always, if there's an option, I'll always go for non-packaged stuff, and it's so annoying in the supermarkets. Like, I would love to not go through the supermarket, and I probably should start getting my fruit and veg elsewhere, but it just pisses me off that you get all of this shitty packaging, and I'm like, I don't need it. Like, just deliver me apples with no packaging. Anyway, they're starting to make a change, but I started to get fruit and veg boxes from this organic farm. It was quite expensive, to be honest. And I started to use soaps and products that were environmentally friendly. And oh wait there, I'm skipping ahead to what you should do. So anyway, I changed my life and I feel a lot better about it. And it's not just changed my life, and I'll get to that a bit later. So I feel like, did I even cover what it is? I also want to cover something called, I don't know how to say this, so maybe I shouldn't have included it, but it's solastalgia. It's a bit like nostalgia, but it's different because it's actually a fear. It's a kind of, I've never had it, and there's a reason why I've never had it, because it's a feeling of homesickness, but you're at home. A bit weird, okay, but it's actually a fear of your environment changing, which scares you to being like, is my home gonna disappear, kind of thing. And it's caused by things like natural disasters. You're like, oh my god, there was a tsunami, is there going to be another tsunami? Obviously, like, here in the UK, everything's pretty fucking sedate. Like, there's nothing concerning in terms of natural disasters going on here, but except the floods I mentioned. We're not on an earthquake zone or near a tsunami zone, or we haven't got a volcano. That it's quite a safe little. Obviously, we're on an island, so the biggest threat to us is just us being engulfed by the sea or getting smaller. So there's, we have constant issues with trying to protect ourselves from water. So I guess you could get that feeling, but there's also like human effects as well. So it's if you had like your someone was mining down the road and causing loads of pollution or destruction of your environment. So it's kind of fairly linked to eco-anxiety, but it's not quite the same. Now, eco-anxiety can lead to something called ecological grief. You can grieve the loss of your environment, or the fear of losing the earth as it is, right? So I've done an episode on grief, I believe. No, I did an episode on breaking up and going through grief. So I'll quickly go through it now, but it's basically you go through denial. So that's kind of what I did. I was like, no, like, I'm just going to avoid it. And then it was anger, depression, and then like hope and getting over it. Those are just briefly, like, very quick synopsis of the stages of grief. I mean, there's actually technically 7, but there was only 4 mentioned in ecological grief. And I think we also need to cover why now? Why are we all worried about the environment now? The environment has really been changing, especially over the last couple of 100 years when we had the Industrial Revolution, technological revolution, but particularly recently because I think because of the news, because of increased awareness because of the news and also because of TV programs. I also think we've got scientific data that is showing us this change, and I also think there's a lot of apocalyptic climate change movies and TV shows, and also people are just starting to wake up to it. Especially with COVID, I think that was a big wake-up call for a lot of people, being like, oh shit, like, we could have more pandemics like that. Imagine if our life was just constantly trying to battle a pandemic. How awful would that be? And I think everyone's going, we need to act now or it will be irreversible. And I think it's the like, let's fucking get on with it. And people are starting to wake up to it, and it's gaining more traction. So I think that's why now. And I also think we're starting to see the effects of the Industrial Revolution that happened in the 1800s. Oh my god, it was so polluted back then. I mean, obviously I wasn't alive, but you know, there was like a smog problem. Smog. And yeah, so we're actually in some ways living in a hyper-analysed state of the world, and I think that's kind of giving some kind of anxiety, because we know a lot. Well, we don't know everything, but we do know a lot, and I think knowing a lot can lead to some anxiety. Like, the more you know, you're like, oh god. But there are ways to know more good things, and we'll get onto that a bit later. You don't have to know all of these negatives. Now, next, let's get on to this random, I thought, or unexpected, okay, maybe not random, unexpected white fragility argument about eco-fear and how it's affecting, more white people are thinking about it and scared about it, and why. Okay, so some of the argument in this article, and maybe I'll leave it down below for reference and you can go check it out if you want to. It's basically saying, and the title was, let me have a quick look, I have got it up on here. Oh, climate anxiety is an overwhelmingly white phenomenon. Basically saying the only people that are worried about the climate are white people. If you didn't, like, that was kind of obvious, but I explained it. And the premise is that this lady wrote a book, and she was basically saying how black people, or people of colour, let's just call them people of colour, were more affected by the climate crisis. Yet the people that responded to her book being published were all white people, or the majority were white people. And she was like, why is that? Like, if it's affecting black people or people of colour more, then why are all the white people messaging me saying they're scared? Because it's probably going to affect them less. And there are a few arguments that she makes in it, and a few of them, they're pretty, like, outstanding, to be honest. Basically, she's saying that white people are scared that they are seeing their future in black people. I keep saying black people, people of colour, although she uses the term kind of interchangeably. Anyway, we're seeing our future in people in, like, Africa, for example, and we are therefore scared that we're like, oh my god, that's going to happen to us. We need to act now so that it doesn't happen to us, but we don't care about those people. And that was kind of the first argument. The second one is that we're scared that because it's happening more rapidly in other countries, let's use Africa as an example because, you know, they've got droughts and wildfires, etc., that the people from those countries are going to become climate refugees, or people with natural disasters in their country are going to become climate refugees and come and move to our country and affect our lives, and we don't want that. So we're like, no, let's sort climate problems out so that it doesn't affect us. It stops affecting them so it doesn't affect us, basically. And another thing was that we want to hold on to our white privilege, and it's the, you know, if people start coming over to our country because they're climate refugees, or we have to start going like helping them or whatever, then we're gonna, we want to keep our privilege as white people and not have to like go and help them or whatever. Another thing that she mentioned might become like a behaviour of ours is that we might then start to hoard resources, and because we've got more money and more resources, that we're going to be the ones that benefit from that. Fair enough. I understood a lot of these arguments and I was like, fair enough, I get it. But I also think it's kind of, there are so many counter arguments that I could put against that whole article. Some of the points are valid. I'm not saying they're not, but I'm just saying there is also another perspective. I always think there's another perspective. I don't necessarily disagree with it. It enlightened me. I was like, oh, fair enough. But you have to think, maybe it's not just like, have you actually asked people of colour whether they have climate fear, or are you just going, oh, okay, those are the people that responded to me? Because you have to think, who are the people that are reading your book anyway? Are people in like tribes in Africa, are they going to be reading your book? Probably not. The people who are reading your book are going to be people who have access to Amazon or the internet, or, who have spare money to spend on these books that, they're going to read. And also they're written in English. Like, it's probably written in English. Like, you have to think of all of those kinds of factors. You can't just go, oh, well, loads of white Americans responded to me. That must mean that only white people are scared of climate crisis. I just think you need to do like a proper survey of the actual data. You can't just go, oh, correlation, done. That's my opinion. And actually, to be honest, it's kind of statistical fact. Like, you can't just make correlations because the correlation appeared in front of you. So yeah, that's my first argument. I also think surely white people make up most of, in fact, do they? I don't know, but they definitely make up most of the population of the people who are going to read your book, I would say. I think she's American, this lady. I don't know, I didn't look that much into it, but in fact, yeah, I think she is. And I'm pretty sure that there are more white Americans than there are Americans of colour, or people that live in America that might come from a different country. So you have to take that into consideration. And unless you're translating your book into Swahili or other, native and delivering it to, and then giving them the means to contact you, like, you have to think, how is the smaller subsection of society going to actually contact you? Now, I also think white people in particular, in the Western world, have a particularly large online voice or presence, and we maybe, this is just a random hypothesis now, maybe we're kind of seeing it as our duty to protect people that are more vulnerable. Maybe you're seeing it in a more negative light, that people are like, oh, well, we're just going to protect ourselves and that's why we're doing it. Or maybe you're like, no, I actually want to help the world, not just myself and white people. Like, the fact that we're trying to stop climate change affects the whole of the world. It doesn't just affect the UK or America. And finally, now there are lots of arguments you can glean from this, but I understand there's going to be counter arguments. I get that, but I can't really have a debate with myself, and we need to move on. Okay, this was an unexpected segue that I wanted to put in there because I thought it was pertinent and fucking wild, in my opinion. I was like, where did this come from? And also, I do think, like, why does everything have to be turned into racism? Like, I don't know. But then also, you could argue, well, we need to highlight these issues, otherwise no one's gonna notice them, which, fair enough. Yeah, like, maybe I was blind to it. Like, I'm always willing to see other people's perspectives. Like, I'm a very open and pretty chilled person, so I'm always willing to hear different perspectives. Finally, I'm like, wait there, isn't it good that we're actually doing something? And I get that you could say, well, oh yeah, now you're thinking like, oh, white people are just gods, that anything that they do is miraculous. I'm like, no, I'm not thinking that. But isn't it good that we're not like, oh, fuck them, like people in poorer countries, I just want to help myself. I'm gonna start hoarding now, and I'm not gonna worry about the world. I'm just gonna like build a fucking wall around my house and block everybody out and fend for myself, and that's it. No, like I think people are like, no, I actually do want to help the world and help people that are affected by the climate crisis, but also people are still struggling with their own issues in their own countries, and you know, like we're struggling with a cost of living crisis, and I don't have a job. Like I know the issues are minor in terms of the general fucking world, and I struggle with that guilt on a daily basis. Trust me, I am like, I have problems, and I talk to my counsellor about this, by the way. I have problems, but I feel guilty for having those problems. I feel like my problems aren't enough. I feel like, why are you moaning, Dawn, when other people in the world are starving, are suffering with, you know, terrorism, have civil wars going on, and you're sat here like, oh no, I can't go out for brunch. Like, okay, that's not what I'm saying. I'm like, fuck, how am I going to pay the bills? But it's like, it's, to me, I just see the whole perspective, and I'm like, oh, I can't really sit on my high horse and moan about my life, even though it panics me and stresses me out. But I have a daily struggle with that guilt of, why am I moaning? You're really not in any hardship. Someone will help you. You're in a safe country. There's food. You've got water. You've got a beautiful house. You've got a partner who loves you. You've got 2 doggos who love you. Like, you have a medical degree. Like, how is your situation a problem? So that's my regular guilt. That's my admission right there. How did I get onto that? But anyway, I would argue that at least we're doing something. And hopefully, I would hope that my actions are helping the rest of the world. Now, what you could argue is, well, I'm going to start eating seasonally, so that's going to affect people who are farming in Kenya, and I'm going to stop eating bananas. I'm not going to stop eating bananas, but I'm going to stop eating bananas because they're shipped from abroad, and that in turn is going to affect their lives, and they're going to struggle with income. I know, I get it. Like, what am I going to do? Like, they've built out their business model off of us importing stuff, and then we're going to stop importing it. Like, oh, that sounds difficult. Like, but people are very good. People are very resourceful. People are always going to adapt. And this is another thing that they mention in the article is these people in lower income countries they've always been adapting. Like, they've been struggling with the climate crisis for much longer than we have, and they've been adapting to it. I mean, that's not really an argument, I wouldn't say. It's like, well, everybody's adapting to problems every day. Like, we had floods in 2007. We had to deal with that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I didn't really fully get that argument, but yes, I understand they've been dealing with it longer. But you often don't, unless you're a truly altruistic person, you know, caring about other people more than yourself, or you're involved in that kind of humanitarian sphere, you're wrapped up in your own world. You are not gonna think about, like, somebody the other side of the world. Like, you're just not. And I know that's a horrible thing to say, but it's true. Like, am I thinking about my neighbour all the time? Like, no, not until I see him, not until he's right in front of me, or until I, you know, maybe if I'm making some noise, I'm like, oh, I don't want to disturb him. But I'm not thinking about everybody else in the world, because that's not a healthy mindset to have, I would say. I think it's important to think about these things, but not be constantly consumed by everything else that's going on in the world, and oh my god, are they all going to be okay? Like, I think, yes, we can... it's so hard, because you're trying to be a nice person, but you also need to defend your own mental health, and it's like, where do I balance that. And I think the balance is so fucking hard, because I constantly, oh my god, I'm getting quite passionate now. I constantly feel like I'm in a good position. Why don't I give to charity more? Why don't I go and help all these people? Blah, blah, blah. I feel constant guilt that I'm not doing enough. I'm not helping enough. I'm not giving to charity enough. I'm not, like, donating enough. And then I'm like, fuck, but how do I also maintain my own life and mental well-being whilst struggling with the guilt of that? Like, how do you even get over that? I don't know. And then I'm like, oh my god, Dawn, stop. Like, you know, people are dying and starving and dehydrating and dying of preventable diseases, and you're sitting here thinking about your own mental health. And then I'm like, and it's like this constant backwards and forwards of, well, I need to look after myself, but no, like, you need to think about other people. And maybe that's only just me. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. Maybe it's just the doctor thing in me. It's like we're programmed, we're like fucking bashed into us that we should be always thinking about somebody else and not ourselves. And then it's kind of like, oh, but you also need to think about your mental health, and if your mental health's not good enough, well, you're not going to be able to help people. And then I'm like, okay, but then if I think about myself, then I'm deemed as selfish and uncharitable and unhelpful and racist, apparently. And, like, do you know what I mean? I'm so fucking stuck. I don't know. Oh, I'm sorry if I'm freaking people out. Like, but this is like a constant issue in my mind. I'm like constantly feeling guilty that, like, oh, but I'm trying to look after my own mental health and other people. I'm trying to look, I want to be helpful to them, but, like, I'm not earning any money. Like, so I'm just protecting my lifestyle. But in relation to other people, like, I do have more money, but also I'm running out because I don't have a job. And it's like, well, I need to oh my god, I could go on for hours. Just this constant cycle of debt, regret, guilt, and doom. And it's, yeah. At the moment, I'm in this kind of place where I'm sorry, I need to think about myself. And that makes me feel guilty saying that. I feel fucking guilty. I'm like, what about other people? But also, I'm like, I don't have a job. How can I help other people when I don't have a job? Financially, I mean, I can't help other people. I'm trying to put all my fucking efforts into making money so that I can stay alive. And that is what I was saying. It connects back round to the fact that we are always thinking about protecting ourselves, because that is just the human condition. That's the condition of any animal, any being. You are constantly, I'm sorry, but you are. It's an instinctive behaviour to protect yourself, to ensure your own survival and others around you. And that is just the way of nature. That's the way of the world. Like, if a lion ran into here, would you put yourself, like, behind other people that you didn't know? No, probably not. You would try and save yourself. But if your child is there, are you going to sacrifice yourself for your child? There's a higher possibility that will happen, okay? Okay, I'm sorry, I went off on a little rant there. But we will now talk about, I feel bad now about being like, how do we get over eco-anxiety? How do we get over eco-fear? Now I feel bad because I've read this fucking stupid article. I don't know if I can call it that, but I just did. I've read this article of me basically making me feel guilty for being white and for worrying about the fucking climate. Like, in my head, I was just trying to do a good thing, right? I made this episode to try and help people, and now I'm being made to feel guilty. In fact, I'm going to close this article because it's just staring at me going, you're white and you know it, and you're a fucking bitch because you don't care about people of colour. No, I don't. Wait there. No, that's not true. I have never in my life been like, I'm going to try and protect my own race. That's not what I was thinking. Like, I want to help the world. I want to protect the world. and everything on it. I want to protect the little fucking slugs and ladybirds, and I understand that it all contributes to a good ecosystem. So that's it. Like, but now I feel guilty for making this episode. Okay, I am just gonna carry on. Okay, I've recognized that I feel guilty about it. I don't know what to do with that, and I'm gonna just put it here. No, I'm gonna put it over here. And I feel guilty about now doing that. But for the purpose of this episode, I can't even stress how now twisted this makes me feel, because I'm like, ugh. Can I even give these tips? Is this me being racist because I'm like, oh, I'm trying to help white people survive? Like, no, okay, that's not what I was meaning. Why did this article make me feel so shit about life? And maybe that's the point. I don't know, okay? Let's put that to one side for a second. Oh my god, I've got such fucking turmoil in my head right now. I've got I don't know what to do. I am too fucking nice. I know you shouldn't say that, and you're probably not a nice person if you say that. But I'm like, I'm too empathetic. I care too much about other people. And this is like a prime example of it, because now I feel bad and I don't know how to get past it. Okay, are you a nice person if you actively say you're a nice person? Probably not. I don't know. Am I? I think I am. But I'm always like, I always feel guilty because I'm not nice enough. I'm like, I could always do more. Oh, I've I had a spare hour. Why didn't I go and volunteer at the fucking donkey sanctuary? I actually did apply to do that and they never got back to me, so fuck you, donkey sanctuary. Why don't you go and help, like, I don't know, starving children in Malaysia? I don't know if that is a thing, but why don't you go and help refugees in, like, refugee camps? I know, I get that. Why don't I? I don't know. I feel this constant guilt for things that I'm not doing, but alas. How do we get over eco-anxiety? Come on, Dawn, you just need to fucking finish the episode. People don't care. Like, maybe they do, but you've talked about it long enough now. You've probably gone on for too long about how guilty you feel, and people are bored of it. I'm sorry. I'm very sorry for rambling on about that, but I wanted to get that out in the open. I want you to know my thoughts, because that's the whole fucking point of a podcast, isn't it? Okay? Yeah. Right. Come on. Okay, I've talked about a couple. Number 1, stopped eating dairy. And everyone's saying like, oh, but what about the dairy farmers? Well, I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't know what to do about that. I'm stumped, alright? Now, and what about meat farmers? Well, people are still going to eat meat. Like, they are. It's not going to stop becoming a thing. I still eat meat. But do I eat less? Yes, of course I do. And do I eat? I've actually changed, okay? Because I eat less meat, I actually eat more expensive meat now. And that's not just like I eat, a better cut. I eat I try to eat only organic and free range. I don't like the idea of my meat or eggs or anything being battery farmed. And it was hard to care about that when you don't have the money to pay for it. But when when you're a student or whatever, but when you get to a point in your life where you're like, okay, I'm just going to eat less of it, you can then afford to splash out a bit more on things that, when you do have that special occasion where you eat meat. So that's my that's my change that I've made. I basically only drink oat milk. I do have some almond milk occasionally, because I have a bit of a thing of like, are oats actually good for us? At least almonds are a natural production of the world, but oats, we kind of made those, alright? I know we didn't, but we kind of did. I think, importantly, don't think that your actions are useless. I think that's a really big thing. Often we can think, like, what's the point? Like, if I do something, doesn't really make a difference. But what I've seen so importantly is that yes, your small action might only be small, but the impact that I've seen on other people copying, I'm not like, oh my god, I'm so influential, like, fucking do what I do, bitch. No, I'm like, if you set an example, don't try and shove it down people's throats, but like, when I changed how I was living, obviously Tom lives with me, so therefore I have impacted the way that he lives. He wastes less food now. He is coming over to the plant-based side. Like, he ate Quorn the other day and he liked it. Quorn is a meat substitute, for those of you who don't know, and it's made from like yeast or something, or some kind of mycoprotein, that's it, which basically means fungus protein. Nice. But it tastes pretty good, and it tastes, it's a really good alternative now. And I've also said to my friends and family, I'm like, can you buy me, be a bit more conscious about what you're buying me for Christmas, birthdays. I don't want, things that are just fucking plastic and useless. I would rather you give me one thing or nothing, but I like presents, so, maybe one thing. I'd rather you gave me one thing that I really loved and was great quality, good for the environment, sustainable, recycled, whatever, than give me 10 things that are just junk. I don't need more things in my life. In fact, if you can give me less things that are higher quality that I will appreciate more, I will thank you for that. I think shopping is... Okay, so now we've influenced everybody. Because now I've said to my friends, and my mum, I'm like, I think it just plants the seed. My mum's of an older generation and probably doesn't appreciate climate issues as much as the younger generation do, but I've planted the seed in her head that I want more sustainable gifts, for example. So maybe she changes how she lives a little bit, or she, it's just that planted seed in her head, like, oh, okay, my daughter cares about it, so maybe I should think about what I could change. And then you just have discussions about it, and it's not that you're like, you should only drink oat milk. Why the fuck are you drinking cow milk, you absolute savage? But it's like, no, I'm gonna have oat milk, like, it's good for the environment, it's good for your health. And then people are like, oh yeah, okay, I'll try it too. And it's not in an aggressive way, it's just in a, this is what I'm doing and this is why I'm doing it, and you could try it too if you want, but if not, then that's fine. And I think that's a nice way to go about it. Wow, this has been a long episode. I've had to reset the camera a few times. I mean, the camera, this is so unimportant, Dawn. The SD card space ran out, so I actually had to have a little break and change it. Actually delete some stuff off it. So, unimportant. Okay. One of the biggest places, not only, we can save energy, we can save water, blah, 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 but I think one of the biggest ways that we can change the world is by changing our shopping habits, because big businesses are some of the biggest contributors to environmental damage. So if you can change the way that you shop, and because it will change the way they are influenced. They are based around money, okay? That's kind of all they care about. Their climate change is not because they care about the climate. I don't think that Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk care about saving the world. I think they care about money. And what influences money? Well, if people are going to buy from you because you support climate things. So Amazon are, changing, they're using eco-friendly vans and stuff like that. And they're using cardboard boxes and using less packaging. And that's because people wouldn't buy from them, or people would complain on the reviews if there's loads of fucking plastic in there. And then people see those reviews and go, oh no, I don't want that either. I don't want loads of plastic. So I've actually noticed it in my recycling bin, the change of how much plastic I used to put in there, and now it's like, okay, I put loads of cardboard in there. Great. So also I think just supporting alternative businesses that use sustainable practices. So that might be smaller businesses. Do you really need to buy as much as you buy? Just cut down how much you buy and change, like, okay, I'm going to buy from a smaller retailer. I don't need to buy, I'll just cut down how much I use, like for instance meat. I do think we are over consumers because we have the commodity, especially in this country, just to be like, la 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 la, I'm just going to buy fucking 2 million toilet rolls and I can afford it, so it doesn't matter. And I think when I started growing my own food, I really appreciated that food, because I was like, I've put time and money, well, not really that much money, but I put time and effort into this, and I've watched it grow from a fucking seed. And if I now throw it away, like, I am what was the point of all of that? Whereas if you just buy a packet of tomatoes from the supermarket, you don't really care. You're just like, well, just a tomato. And arguably, those, like non-organic stuff and things that are mass produced, they're not actually that nutritious. So you could probably you have to eat way more of it. It's got pesticides in it. Arguably, do we know how much cancer they're causing? I don't know. I would argue that maybe we don't. In fact, no, we don't. Like, is that potentially causing the changes? We're seeing bowel cancer in younger and younger people, and I'm wondering, is it because we're all eating not just processed shit, not just refined stuff, but also stuff that has pesticides coated all over it and all within it, in its cells, and then we're eating it over and over and over again. But actually, you could just eat tastier food that is organically grown and just eat less of it, but you get the same, if not more, significantly more nutritious value. Or grow some at home, and then you really appreciate it and you're like, oh my god, I've been missing this, and it tastes so much better. Trust me, I grew some spinach and I was like, wow, I've been missing out. It tasted amazing. And then you buy the shit from the supermarket which just tastes like nothing. You're like, okay, cool, was there any point of this? Just to make myself feel like I'm eating vegetables. Like, honestly, if you just do one thing after this episode, go and buy some organic, fucking amazing, farm grown, one fruit or vegetable, but get like spinach, tomatoes, or like a fruit, and just and then get another one from the supermarket and taste the difference. That's all I'm asking you to do. It's not expensive. That's all I'm asking you to do. Okay? So I think if we change the way we shop, then companies have to change the way they behave, because they are consumer led. So they have no choice. Another way is we can support. So I have my own business and I want to help plant more trees through that. So if you have your own business, some people might not, and this is kind of irrelevant, you can set up something called Ecology or something similar that plants trees for you every time you make a sale. I also think if you are a homeowner, there are so many things you can do as a business and a homeowner that improve your ecological footprint. I actually have my own foldable solar panel and battery pack that I fill up with the solar panel, and I think it's great. Now, I don't own my own house, so I don't have my own solar panels, but if I did, I would. And I would also put in a compost bin. I would also put in a water butt collector, but I did that all in my last house and got fucking penalised for it. So I just can't be bothered with the hassle of having to deal with the landlord who's like, you didn't get rid of the compost bin. And I'm like, how am I supposed to get rid of the compost bin? It's got fucking compost in it. And yeah, it was just a real nightmare. So I was like, I'm not doing it again. Anyway, Bristol actually has composting bins that you can put your food waste in, but they didn't have that in Exeter. So that's why I did that. And I think just reducing how much we buy, stop buying from fast fashion. Like, I can't believe people are promoting this Shein thing. It's like Primark, but I don't know if it's worse, but same. Equally worse, equally bad. I often recycle like everything that I possibly can. Make sure you're washing the stuff, because otherwise it's pointless. Like, they won't do it and they'll just throw it all away into landfill. Buying secondhand, I am loving that, because number one, it's cheaper, and number two, those things are often made really well. Like, that is why they're still going 20 years later. And the shit that we buy now, if you just buy it cheap, what do they say? Like, if you buy a pair of shoes once, then if you buy cheap, then you have to buy it like 10 times. But if you buy expensive, then you just buy it once. It's true. I see it with shoes all the time. And I just think, there's so many changes that you can make in your life. You probably already know these, but I think even if you're doing something, I think it's a mindset thing. Sorry if that was loud. I just hit the table. It's a mindset thing. If you're feeling like you're contributing in a positive way and not just shoving your head in the sand, like, you're going to feel better. And you're going to influence the younger generation who look up to you. You might not think that they do, but remember when you were a child and you looked up to people and you were just like, oh my God, you're fucking God. And whatever you do, people are going to follow. I think also reading positive news, and there's a website called positivenews.com, I think, and you just need to type in positive news into the googly boy. Or you can also use search engines which plant trees and stuff whenever you search. Maybe I should start doing that. In fact, yeah, I'm gonna. There we go. Epiphany. So when you search in a search engine, positive news, that should come up, positivenews.com, and then you can look at all the positive climate change things that are actually happening. And I think for some people, it is actually their job to make the world a better place, to try and reduce climate change. And I think if we can support them, if we can support their role and their job, and we might not work in the environmental sphere, and that's okay. But if we can support them to do their job better, then I'm all for that. Anyway, guys, I think that's enough for today. It's a really nice day, so I want to go out and play, and it's 4 p.m. What the hell happened? I swear I sat down at like 2. I don't know what happened here. So anyway, if you liked it, I would love it if you rated me on Spotify or wherever you're listening on podcasts, wherever you're listening to the podcast on. Let me see if you can rate it on here. I don't think you can rate it on my actual website-y thing. So if you go on to Spotify or wherever you can listen to podcasts and rate it on there, that would be so amazing. Because it's hard to get your podcast out to people, and by having the support of you guys will help me reach my message to more people. And yeah, if you're on YouTube, give it a like. Subscribe if you wanna. I'll never force you to do anything, but that's what I'd love you to do. And just tell other people. If you want me to cover any topics, I am led by you guys. I am making content for you, but I would rather make content that you actually want to listen to. So if you want me to talk about a particular topic, fucking leave it in the comments down below, or contact me at my email address, which is contact@diariesofadoctor.com, and I will do it. I will. So yeah, I'll see you. I upload on a Monday and a Thursday, and then the video comes out on my Patreon page the same day that the podcast comes out. And you can support the content creation because I don't actually get paid for it, literally nothing. And then the video comes out 2 weeks later on YouTube. So if you do want to watch it sooner, you can watch it via there. And I might even add in some extra little bits, like some extra content that you can only see on the Patreon page, and that will, I don't know, would that be good? Some little backstage, behind the scenes stuff, I don't know. Let me know. I love to hear from you guys, and if I do, I'll give you a little shout out. Yeah, I will. Okay, thanks so much for listening, guys, and I'll see you in a few days. Bye!